Hey everybody, how's it going? It's Russell Matthews here, and in today's video we're going to talk about the whole CERB repayment issue and how now, finally, the CRA has announced and recognized that it made an error during the first initial weeks that this benefit was available. It seems that the CRA agents who you would talk to on the phone, along with the webpage, actually had some false information which misled certain Canadians to apply when they actually weren't eligible in the CRA's eyes. So we're going to take a close look at this statement that the CRA released, basically fessing up to these mistakes that were made in the early days of CERB. And for you to fully understand why the CRA put out this statement, we first have to touch on the head of the union of all of the workers at the CRA who started talking to the media about the information that either was or wasn't provided to the CRA workers. So this information comes from iPolitics, which did a great job in actually reaching out to Marc Brière, who's this head of the union of taxation employees, and they were able to get this information, which may have prompted the CRA's timely release of this sort of admission of an error being made. So after the Star reported that people had claimed that they were given false information by CRA agents, iPolitics reached out to Marc Brière and asked, hey, is this something that was happening? Did you know about this? And this is what he replied with. He said that based on conversations with union members, he's aware that call center agents were given incorrect information about CERB eligibility, and as a result, an unknown number of CERB applicants were misinformed by them. And he went on to say that an early version of an instruction guide was circulated to CRA call center agents that contained answers to questions that CERB applicants could be expected to have. The guide specified that an applicant's gross keyword there, pre-tax self-employed income would be used to determine whether he or she was eligible to receive the CERB. Now we know that this admission that they were giving out that information, that it was the gross pre-tax income that had to be over that $5,000 sort of threshold, that's a big deal, right? Because as of right now, the Canadian government was saying, hey, there were no changes made. We haven't changed the rules. People who applied in good faith and applied and got the benefit, if they were entitled to it, they can keep it. But if they weren't entitled to it, then they're going to have to pay it back. But now here's sort of some information that's saying maybe some rules were changed at the beginning of all of this. This is especially important because this is the information that was given to these CRA call center agents. Now, this was the front line of people who were there to answer questions when people called in and said, hey, I'm not sure if I'm eligible. Could you let me know if I'm eligible or not? Now, if these CRA agents were unwillingly or unknowingly giving away this false information, people could have made their mind up about their eligibility for CERB, decided, okay, I should apply for this because they're saying that I'm eligible, they're encouraging me to apply, I'm going to apply every month following because, hey, they told me I should be fine. So even if these mistakes were rectified in the first couple weeks after this benefit was released, once people had made their decision and realized, okay, I'm eligible based on what the agent was telling them, they'd just continue to apply and get this benefit because they assume they're eligible. That's what people told them. Then the iPolitics article goes on saying, however, net pre-tax self-employed income was the actual thing that was being used for CERB eligibility in determining whether or not you're eligible. Of course, we know this now, and it had been since the inception of the program, which began accepting applicants on April 6th. Now, net income is also normally used by the CRA in tax assessments of self-employed workers. Now, this whole section here saying that net income is what's usually used by the CRA, this is an argument that a lot of people have been using, saying, hey, these people should have known and just assumed that it was their net income, right? Because that's how the CRA generally does their filings, right? It's all based on this net income. The same goes for a bunch of other benefits. But if there was a miscommunication by CRA agents that it actually wasn't net and that it was gross, then that's where the problem lies. And they say that about 3 weeks later, call center agents were given an updated version of the instructions with the correct eligibility information. And this is all coming from Brière, who is the head head of this union that represents everybody who works for the CRA. And it makes sense that Brière is going to sort of stand up for the CRA employees, right? Or at least the call center employees, because right now as it stands, they're taking a lot of flack saying, hey, these people, they gave me false information. Now I have to pay back $14,000. But now Brière is sort of trying to make it clear that, hey, this isn't the agent's fault. This is the information that was coming from higher up that was sent down to them that was faulty. They were just relaying the information that they were given. So he's trying to protect these workers who he's set up to represent, which makes sense. And then of course, as a key point here, it says that if agents were given the wrong eligibility information, then given the right info, the error was never communicated to Canadians by the CRA or anyone else in government, even though the CERB continued until late September. The fact that they didn't communicate this to Canadians in any sort of way isn't really the best look, right? Because if they made this change, then they would have recognized that there was an error to begin with. And at that point, I'm sure that they would know that this false information was given out, at least to some Canadians. So it would have made sense to sort of at least put out in some sort of statement, or even just on your Twitter saying, hey, double check this because we have reason to believe that people were misled at the start of this. But we didn't see any sort of statement like this 3 weeks after they had been given the correct information. So finally, somebody with a little bit more information on the inner workings and what's going on inside of the CRA is coming out and saying, yes, there was some information that was changed, even if it wasn't communicated to Canadians. So once this article was posted, it didn't take very long for the CRA to kind of be forced to come out with a statement. Now, I'm not sure that this article by iPolitics 100% prompted the release of this statement from the CRA, but the timing kind of makes it seem like it, right? They hadn't put out any sort of statement, and finally somebody's starting to talk about it. Okay, we need to say something now. And this is what they said. So this was sent to iPolitics after they had posted this story about Brière sort of talking about these errors. They say that the CRA sent an email to them admitting that they had erred in communicating the eligibility requirements for the CERB for self-employed Canadians. And here's the exact statement. It says that the Government of Canada acknowledges that communications on this topic were unclear in the first days after the CERB was launched. And this is coming from Sylvie Branch, who's a spokesperson from the CRA. She goes on to say that this includes both the CERB web pages as well as information provided to call center agents, which of course was then passed on to Canadians who were calling with questions. She says, "We regret that this lack of consistent clarity led some self-employed individuals to mistakenly apply to the CERB despite being ineligible." Then they say that we know that the vast majority of Canadians are honest and forthright, especially when it comes to their tax affairs. In order to account for errors made in good faith, the government has indicated from the outset that there would be no penalties or interest in cases where CERB needs to be repaid. Now, when they say no penalties or interest, that doesn't mean that you're not going to have to pay it back. No, what it means is that you're not going to have to pay any additional interest on having this money for this length of time, and also you're not going to have to pay any additional money as a penalty because of this. But they go on to say that, however, we recognize that for some individuals, repaying the CERB could present a significant financial hardship. Of course it would. Who wouldn't be a little bit challenged to pay $14,000 out of the blue? Now, for this reason, we will give Canadians more time and flexibility to repay based on their ability to pay. And they follow that up by saying the CRA will provide more details about repayment in the coming weeks and will work with people on a case-by-case basis. And that's all, again, coming from this representative branch. Now, one of the biggest takeaways from this statement is this sentence right here. For this reason, we will give Canadians more time and flexibility to repay based on their ability to pay. So this comes in the face of pressure from the other political parties who are saying, hey, you know what? If people were misled to apply for the benefit, thinking that they were eligible and they've gone and spent this money, they shouldn't have to pay it back because it was the CRA's mistake, or that's at least what some parties are saying. But here it seems like they're sort of pushing down this line of saying, hey, you're going to have to repay it, but maybe not right now, and maybe there won't be any penalties or interest or charges, and maybe we'll set up a payment plan for you. How about that? Now, pretty soon after this statement was released, Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the NDP, who has been one of the most vocal party leaders about this issue and how he believes that people shouldn't have to pay it back if they were misled, he was quick to hop on Twitter and talk about this statement. In this tweet, he said that the government admits it told people they could apply for CERB, then changed the rules. People are worried about how they'll pay the bills. They shouldn't have to pay for the Liberals' mistake. Add your name and tell Mr. Trudeau to stop the CERB clawback. And then he links to a petition sort of trying to garner support for that. If you're interested, I'm sure you can find this tweet on there and just Google this petition. You'll find it. And it's not entirely unexpected to see a tweet like this because Jagmeet has been really heavy into saying people shouldn't have to pay this back and pushing his idea that it should be corporations who have benefited from the pandemic and have had above average profits. They should be the ones that are really gone after in terms of the benefits that they received and that being clawed back from them. Now I'll leave the debate about what should be done up to you. I mean, there's pros and cons on both sides, right? A lot of people want to see these payments sort of forgiven if they were misled, but at the same time, if you were to do that, how would you filter out the people who actually applied in bad faith or like knowingly defrauded the system to get this money that they knew they weren't eligible for, right? It's tricky on both sides, so I'll let you talk about that in the comments a little bit. I always read all of my comments and I reply to as many as I can because I sort of use that as a way to get an idea of what people are thinking and what they're feeling about these issues so I can know what to cover next for you. So if you want your voice to be heard, make sure to drop a comment down there. It certainly seems like this whole story around CERB payments and repayments due to this sort of blunder by the government is going to continue in the future, right? We're seeing the CRA saying, hey, we're going to come out with updates on what kind of plans you can use to pay this back, but at the same time, we're seeing pressure from the other parties to stop this repayment altogether. So if you want to stay updated with anything to do with this story, I'm going to be bringing you updates right here, along with other financial and wealth building tips. So if you want to set yourself up to live a more financially stable future, make sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. I'm bringing updates like this all the time. And if you've made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching the whole thing. It seems that YouTube uses the amount of time that each individual watches a video to decide whether or not to send it out to other people. So if you think that my videos are helpful to Canadians and could be beneficial for somebody else to see, I love how you're watching the entire video. And with all of that said, I really hope this video has helped you out a little bit, or at least kept you up to date with what's going on with this constantly changing story. And that's it for me, so I'll see you next time.